It's just too much information, great information, just to be contained for just a few. All right, so that's my sermon. So Jeff, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Ron. I appreciate it. This is going to be a great panel. We've got such an awesome group that's assembled, and we've really got different elements of sports law and athlete management covered. Two people that work as senior counsel right now, sports law, and Nichelle Levy. I'm so excited to meet Nichelle. Levy or Levy? I want to make sure I get it right, Nichelle.
Levy is correct. Thank you.
Got it. Nailed it. Okay. And Paul Loving. How can you not be a good guy when your last name is Loving? Paul Loving, who's also working senior counsel for Holland and Knight up in Portland, has extensive experience in so many areas regarding athlete endorsement agreements and sports marketing, social networking, different sports properties. We'll get into Paul's career as we go along. Jake Fleschner is the director of marketing and partnerships for David Meltzer Enterprises. So he's involved working directly on the marketing side for athletes, and came out of the universities, went to Milken High School in LA, and then to the University of Michigan out of the Ross School of Business. And so he's really helping David build something with his company, doing great work. And then two former students of mine, Joe Barquette, just like one of my crown jewels students who I watched him sitting there in class and then deciding to, start a sports agency representing athletes pretty much right out of college. I mean, he went after he got his degree at USC, a combination of business cinema degree. Then he got a master's in human behavior, which I know has come in handy along the way, working with athletes in kind of a crazy time. Went to the London School of Economics and political science, got an international marketing degree, and then co-founded Empire Athletes, which focuses on right now NFL players, pro football, but also baseball, getting to that too. And then Allison Gaylor, who I just love. Allison was a student at Brown, and they had a program where that students could take a semester and go to another university that offered a program that they were interested in. So Allison, being from LA, and her uncle is Lon Rosen, who's director of marketing for the Dodgers and worked with Magic Johnson, his historic career, and got a chance to, come out here in LA and study and get closer to kind of her dream. And went to law school at UCLA, where Paul was undergrad, and now she became the founder and president of, and I love this name, Disrupt the Game, going back to 2012. Disrupt the Game. And she certainly has done that in representing her WNBA players at a very high level. So anxious to talk to Allison about her career path and what she sees down the road in her business. So thank you guys so much, all of you, for being here. We're honored that we could bring all of you together. So I'll start. Let me just start. We mentioned off the top the two senior counsels. So Nichelle, it's so interesting. And when we talk about career paths, can't wait to get into this with you. You're senior counsel for NASCAR, working on the digital media side, based in Charlotte. So tell us about sort of your journey to get to NASCAR, which, even though it's certainly a great worldwide interest, it especially has a niche in the South. So we're not quite as familiar necessarily on the West Coast. But how did it become sort of a part of your life? And tell us about the things that you do working for NASCAR.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, guys, for having me. I'm very pleased to be able to be with you today. Thankfully, this virtual environment has really provided some great new opportunities for us to kind of reach out to talk and get the chance to kind of meet other people that we normally wouldn't have. So I became aware of and sort of involved in NASCAR when my husband and I relocated to Charlotte. So just to step back a little bit, my career in sports has spanned kind of a interesting trajectory. When I was in law school, I was an intern with the National Hockey League. And I actually went back to law school after having practiced in advertising and marketing for 8 years because I wanted a career in entertainment and sports. And I realized, having worked in those areas with EMI Capital Music Group and some other companies, that the people that were very successful in those areas were lawyers, whether they were practicing as lawyers or not. And so I felt like I really needed that background. So that's why I went to NYU for law school. And then while I was in law school, I interned at the National Hockey League. And then also while in law school, I interned with Loeb & Loeb, which is a well-known entertainment firm. Their home base is in LA, but office in New York is where I practiced out of. And so there got the real opportunity, mostly doing entertainment work. And then went over to Time Warner Global Marketing and was doing deals there, being able to put together sort of multi-platform agreements across internet, magazines, television, et cetera, selling basically ad packages for large clients. And then when we were moving to Charlotte, I was like, what am I going to do here? Interviewed with the Hornets, and that didn't work out. And but then somebody said, hey, you know, NASCAR is really big here, and there's a firm here that represents about 2/3 of NASCAR teams and drivers, and that was Robinson, Bradshaw, and Henson. And so I went and I got a chance to know the head of that practice group, Stoke Caldwell, who is the dean of motorsports law. And they had a lot of lawyers that had sports background, but not so much entertainment background. And so I was a nice, add on to what they were doing for their clients. All those same clients are small businesses in a lot of ways. They have websites, they need privacy statements, all the things you think about a small business needing to operate. These teams were really operating as small businesses, and they needed marketing services, legal services that any consumer-facing kind of business needs, and that's the background that I have. And so, and I'll stop there, but I'll just pause to say, working with Robinson Bradshaw, I got to know other people in NASCAR. And when NASCAR decided to bring their digital platform work back in-house from Turner Sports in 2012, they were looking for a lawyer that had technology background, consumer background, privacy background, because they needed a lawyer to advise on how do you operate a media platform. And that was the background that I had. And so that's how I came to be at NASCAR Digital Media, where I've been practicing for the last almost 9 years.
That's great. Great, Nichelle. It's great that you were able to see an opportunity and just go for it. And you don't necessarily have to be an expert in that particular sport. We've talked about that constantly throughout the day. Is you have to have a skill set, or skill set that's required in for any job. Your work ethic, your communication skills, go the extra mile, all those things.
I could not agree more. And I just have to jump in and say,
Sure.
I was not a hockey fan either when I went to the National Hockey League, and I was competing against a lot of people that were Uber fans. And I was talking about the work. I was asking about the skill set. What is the work? And I do think that when you're looking to get into sports, it's great that you're an uber fan of that sport, but you need to be technically proficient in your legal practice. That's what, or in whatever practice that you're doing. They don't need another Uber fan. They need somebody that's going to propel the business. Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Great advice. And Paul Loving, who's senior counsel for Holland and Knight in Portland, as I mentioned, UCLA undergrad. He was there during some glory days for Bruin football with Troy Aikman and Eric Ball, Charles Albark, a lot of the guys that I remember following very well, Carnell Lake. And then went up to Oregon Law School. And Paul, feel free to tell us a little bit about your journey to get to where you are as a senior counsel now at Holland and Knight.
Sure. And you mentioned Troy. Troy was my roommate when he transferred from Oklahoma. So that was a good pull, Jeff.
Fun fact. That's great, Paul.
Good fun fact. So he was, and Gaston Green was freshman year. So we had a fair group of folks there. So, Nichelle's journey is a great one. I've not dealt with her, but I've dealt with the folks at NASCAR when Adidas had a relationship with Dale Jr. And of course, Dale Jr. was represented by her old law firm and Stoke Caldwell and that team. So I think it's a reminder of sports is a small world, and it's a good thing to think about the reputation that you build in this industry. And it's important that you maintain integrity because if you have a bad reputation, I will tell you, and I see Michelle nodding, some of the other panelists, it gets around quite quickly and people remember. And there was a great phrase from one of the lawyers at Nike, long life, or can't remember it, but it happens. People remember. So I ran track at UCLA. I came up as an athlete. I was part of a great group of folks there who were world-class, and I was just very average, to be quite candid. So I realized that I needed to figure out a way to pay the bills because, Olympic gold medals was not going to be the thing that was going to put money on my table. Or food on my table. So I ended up going to law school up at University of Oregon. And I got in with some folks that have a connection to that university. You might know Nike, that has a deep connection. Phil Knight has a deep connection to the University of Oregon. So I was fortunate enough to get to work for another law firm like Michelle talked about, to go there, start my career doing work for Nike, and then eventually was able to transition in-house to where I did the sports marketing, entertainment marketing, and this will date me somewhat, but I was the lawyer that converted Nike.com from a promotional website to an e-commerce website. Yes, there was a period of time, folks, where websites did not have e-commerce, and so that's a little dating. But I got to do really great work there with a great group of people. Eventually ended up leaving and doing some sports marketing consulting. Came back to practice at a law firm, and where I did work for Adidas and became special counsel for Adidas in 2005. Allison, I know you've got some stuff going. Chris McGuire told me kind of some deals that are happening in the works right now with Allison and one of her big clients. So it's great to get to see your face. As opposed to just working behind the scenes and you not knowing that I'm working on your stuff. So, I was able to do that work. And then I eventually ended up starting my own small law firm. And then I went back to a big law firm. And so Holland & Knight is the 10th largest law firm in the US. We have 27 offices around the world: London, Bogota, Mexico City. The office in Portland is one of the smaller ones, but the focus of my practice there is on entertainment and sports marketing. I primarily do work on the brand side, so a little different. I'm typically working with, so for example, if I was working with NASCAR, I'd be working with one of the sponsors that had a relationship with NASCAR on the sponsor side. So, or working with Allison or Joe or Jake, working with a brand who's doing a deal with the particular talent that they're representing. So that's kind of the path that I've gone through and where I sit today.
I got to ask you what high school you went to, Paul, if you came to UCLA as an athlete.
So I went to Brother Rice High School. I played with B.J. Armstrong before he went on to bigger and better things.
Brother Rice and the Farrs, and the Farrs as well.
Yeah, and Mike and Mel Farr. And that's actually came out with Mel Farr was a year before, and Mike Farr was a great memory, Jeff. So as you can see, I hang around really great athletes, and I'm just kind of an average.
A nice link between Paul and Michelle is from John, one of our attendees. One of the students says that he's interviewing NASCAR driver Jesse Iwuji, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, next week for UCLA radio. So there's your combination of NASCAR and UCLA going on.
Nice.
So Jake, we're talking about sports marketing. Paul touched on a little bit, and gosh, your career is really just getting started. Tell us about how you kind of got directed there in your own journey, where you thought you might end up when you were a student in high school and college, and how you got to this point with David Meltzer.
Of course, and it's an honor to be here. And I wish that Michigan was a better football school, because then I can say that. But hey, we're a basketball school, so I think this is our year. I know March Madness is going to be amazing. I'm super excited for it. But a little bit different than Paul and Michelle. I think they're way more experienced than me, so I'm keeping my ears wide open and I'm listening. Just like I listen to you, Jeff, and everyone else that's a part of this. So
we're all taking notes. Believe me, Jake, we all are.
Yeah, I've been taking notes the whole time. So that's definitely something I've learned. Always take notes. You never know what you're going to learn. But yeah, I'm a little younger. I'm 24, just turned 24. I went to the University of Michigan. I went to Milken for high school. And while I was there, I interned for someone named Gary Vaynerchuk. So he's sort of the mogul when it comes to marketing. And then he put me in touch with David. So I've been working with David Meltzer now for about 2 years, right when I graduated. So this is actually my first job. David was the CEO of Lee Steinberg Sports and Entertainment. So he represented some of the most well-known athletes in the world. And now he's sort of built his personal brand. And what that means is he does keynote speaking, obviously, around the world. We have the #1 podcast all time on Entrepreneur Magazine, where we interview some of the most well-known influencers, athletes, and executives. And I'm sort of the talent booker for that show. So very grateful I get to be around some of the most well-known, influential people in the world. For example, we had Tyreek Hill on today, and then also Paul Rabel. So basically 2 in 1 day, which was incredible. And yeah, I mean, my journey started with Gary. I've always been super entrepreneurial. I've always been more interested than interesting. And I've always tried to learn as much as I can. So what I do for Dave now is I'm sort of with him at all times. I'm actually at our office right now, and I do all of his partnerships and marketing. Very grateful that I get to travel the world with him as well. Right before COVID happened, we were in India. He was giving some speeches there. And yeah, it's been an incredible journey. And I'm sort of just building David's brand as much as I can and trying to connect with individuals like Michelle, Paul, Jeff, Joe, Allison, and try to get as much done as I can. So
That's
I
great.
appreciate it, and I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. You're crushing it there, Jake. So senior counsel and Jake involved in the kind of the marketing side of sports. And then we pivot to Allison and Joe on the sports representation side. Allison, doesn't seem like that long ago. I looked out and there you were taking my class as a visiting student from Brown. And then you disrupt the game in 2012, and here you are. So if you want to tell the students about your journey and what you were thinking when you were sitting in the classroom, and what you thought your goals might be, and how you could make an impact in sports, and then how you did it. So welcome again, Allison.
Thanks for having me. It's been a minute. I think I was in your class in 2010, so it's been at least a decade.
Been a decade.
And
Yeah.
then Paul, I don't know if you remember where we met, but I do, with our mutual friend. You remember?
Oh, no. Well, that I like the cliffhanger there. Now I'm going to have to think back.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it was Toronto All-Star back in the day. But anyways, and someone connected that we were both UCLA alums and all of that. But yeah, so fast forward, I guess, from Professor Fellinger's class to now. And I always knew that my trajectory would ultimately probably lead me into the agent realm, just because of growing up watching my uncle do what he did and really kill it and lead the way in everything he did. And so interned a lot through Brown University. And basically because I was in Providence, I knew that the opportunities locally would be limited. So I did as much as I could when I was at home over summers in LA. And one thing that I was told pretty early on is to get a breadth of the industry and just get as much experience as I could, even if I knew ultimately I was going to go the agent route. And so I worked for Fox Sports. I worked for the Sparks. I worked for my uncle at the agency he was at the time. And so I really think I got a pretty rounded education in terms of experience. And that helped propel me once I did launch Disrupt the Game. I worked for a sports and media investment fund business development company for about a year out of school, and then started my agency right thereafter. And so, yeah, I don't know. I was always kind of like a hustler in terms of wanting to reach out to people, wanting to build relationships. I've always tried to help people before I ask for help. I hate asking for help even today. I think when you figure out what your value is and how to add value, it's a key to open up relationships. I was very, very active on LinkedIn, probably since LinkedIn launched, even while I was in school, just trying to bring Brown alumni back to speak for this sports business club that I started. So I was just trying to do whatever I could with what I had and just build from there. And so fortunately, fast forward to today and as an attorney and as an agent, but I don't represent my clients as their attorney. I represent them as their agent. And so fortunate to work with some really incredible women, both on the court, on the field. I have one women's soccer player that I recently started working with, and off the field, off the court, I work with just incredible people. And that, is what drives me to help them in any way I can, just to help them with whatever value I could bring.
It's so great, Allison, you focused on you weren't here in the morning, and that came up, the whole idea of your value add. That's what I call it. What is your value add? And Tamiko, the parent of one of the attendees in the conference, asked about how do you identify what your value add is when you're just starting out? And I just said, you just try to avail yourself of as many experiences as you can, so that you can figure out where it is, because it's not going to necessarily come right away. You're going to find it as your journey goes along, figuring out where it is you can provide the most value. I wanted to ask if you could just tell the students about some of your clients that they may know, WNBA.
Yeah. If I could add a note in terms of how to add value or how to figure out how to add value, I think for me, it was always, one of my clients makes fun of me because every time I meet someone new, I'll always ask them where they're from, because whatever answer they give, I can immediately figure out a way to connect with them based on where they're from, whether I've visited it or, visited the city, or I know someone that's from there. Like, as long as you create a connection point, then you can start to get to know what people care about. And once you know what people care about, you can figure out ways to help them. And so I think that's at least where I try to come at it from a value perspective. I mean, as I've, grown in the industry, I definitely have more to add in terms of value, but I think you can just figure it out based on what people are looking for and what they care about.
That's funny, because I do the same thing. Where you're from, where you went to high school. That's just kind of my thing. And I'm glad you put it so well, so formally, like that's a connection point. So I'm glad you mentioned, what is your connection point? How can you do that? Yeah. So anyway, you were saying about your clients.
So my agency, Disrupt the Game, we represent 10 clients. 8 are current WNBA players, including Liz Cambridge, Chelsea Gray, Chiney Ogwumike, Kelsey Mitchell, Elizabeth Williams. I mean, I could make the whole list, but I don't want to bore you guys. And then one former WNBA player, Lisa Leslie, who I've been working with pretty much since I started my agency. And then one women's soccer player, Crystal Dunn, who's a star for the Portland Thorns and the U.S. Women's National Team.
Yeah, fantastic. Joe Barquette, I always love to see you. You've been so good about not just coming to my class and sharing your experience with students, but you've always said, if you have a student, I don't care who it is, I don't care how many I already have, if they want to work, I will find a way to put them to work. So I just want you to know up front how much I always appreciate your support and the things you've done, and would love for you to tell the students here about your journey and how you got here and starting your own agents. I can remember sitting down with you over dinner in Santa Monica, said, you and your partner, Cameron Weiss at the time, this is what we want to do. And I remember walking away thinking, this is going to be hard, but I think those guys can do it. And you did. So
I don't think we had any idea how hard it was going to be, honestly, but here we are. So I think we could say it all worked out, but thank you for the warm intro, and it's great to be here. I started working in sports while I was still in college at USC. So I was actually lucky enough to be an intern for Lee Steinberg my sophomore year of school. And so needless to say, I wasn't going to class as much as I probably should have, but I was commuting to Newport every day, which is where his office was. And I was actually picking him up at 5:30 in the morning every day that year. So it was a lot of time back and forth. But, at the time, Lee was one of the biggest agents in all of sports, even though he mainly just worked on football and had a little bit of golf and basketball at the time. But, he had over 100 guys in the NFL and represented, I think it was 8 starting quarterbacks in the league. So it was a tremendous opportunity for me to get my feet wet in the business, because I got to start at one of the highest, biggest agencies, where they were so busy that as an intern, I was working with guys directly like Ben Roethlisberger and Ricky Williams. So it was, I loved it. And it was kind of what solidified in my head that I was going to work in sports. I just kind of didn't know what field I was going to work in yet, since I knew, it was really kind of impossible to break into in my mind. Nobody in my family worked in the business, and I didn't really know anybody at all in terms of family friends who was in it. I just kind of knew this is something I wanted to do. I ended up getting the internship with Lee through an ad in the Daily Trojan, and then same with the internship I ended up getting at the Dodgers the next year, which I don't know if they still post up in the Daily Trojan like that. I doubt it, but maybe in the Career Center. I went through an internship process with the Dodgers in the marketing department for a year. And then afterwards, I was kind of the kid who just refused to turn in his key card. And so, you know, in early January, when they kind of let everybody go, I just kind of went to the bathroom for 2 hours and then would come back and keep kind of checking the mail and the emails every day. And finally they said, what are we going to do with you? So they gave me this job called an ambassador at the time, which was a customer service rep. And I basically dealt with very high level issues that were, you know, fan related problems, which for me was probably one of the best career building years that I had, because you learn how to put out fires very quickly. And that's really helped me in my current job where, you know, I wouldn't call it a specific skill set, but unless you've been in those types of situations, you really don't know how to handle issues when they come at you and you're like, we need to make a decision now on something. So that's still kind of like some of my particular career experience that I still take with me to this day. My last 2 years, I was in baseball operations there. So that was, you know, really where I wanted to end up being. But then in 2010 is when the McCourts sold the team. And so that was my last year there. And, you know, in sports, when that happens, normally they bring in their own front office people. So everybody who left, who I was good friends with there, the, you know, or the vice presidents or whatnot, said I should probably find another way to stay in the business. So that's when I decided to go back to school. I went back to USC and I got my master's in human behavior, which is a business psychology degree. And I really wanted to put to use what I had learned in my work experience. So I felt that that was the best degree. And, you know, it ended up really teaching me a lot about people that I already, a lot about human interaction that I already knew and people's traits and whatnot, but just kind of took it to the next level. And, you know, dealing with athletes, recruiting people, and I would say entertaining on a regular basis, it's really helped a lot. So while I was getting my master's degree, I interned with CAA and Athletes First in their football department, where I was mainly just recruiting. And then after that, decided to start Empire Athletes, and now we've been in business for 9 years. So it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes on and it's onward and upward. So one of the questions one of the students has, Soban, hope I'm pronouncing it right, but I'm gonna let any of you jump in on this one. Is what's the hardest part of working with athletes? Because you're all doing it to some extent, some a little more directly than others in this group. The hardest part, and then also the most rewarding part. So whoever wants to take a shot at that one, hardest part and most rewarding part working with athletes.
I would say the most rewarding part, at least for me, is especially with the rookies, like when those guys get drafted or they sign that first contract, we're really just barely helping them get over this mountain that they've been climbing their whole lives. And to see the emotion and how happy and proud they are, it really is, it's cool to be a part of.
Yeah. You can mention a couple of your clients too, Joe, feel free. I mean, I'd love to have you tell the Michael Sam story, because that's an important story, and it's one that really helped launch your business too.
Definitely. Yeah, we can get into Michael as much as anybody wants to talk about it. You know, current clients in the NFL, Austin Eckler is probably the most notable one. Emmanuel Mosley started in the Super Bowl for the Niners last year at corner. Currently have 9 guys on NFL rosters, and then several baseball players, only 1 on an active roster, but hopefully a few more by the end of the year. So
great. So anybody else on hardest part working with athletes and most rewarding? Paul, what about you? Or Allison, please.
Yeah, I could chime in. I mean, hardest part, like, sports is a hard business. It just is. It's a constant grind. It's a constant hustle. For people that think they want to get into sports because you get to go to games or watch games or hang out with athletes, like, that's not what the job actually is. And so I think it's just, you know, it's constant. It's 365. It's 7 days a week. I like my job like that. I like to work. I like, you know, what I do and who I do it with. So I don't know, I guess I turned the negative into a positive as I talked through that. But in terms of the best part about my job, I mean, I'm with my clients in their lows and their highs and everything in between. And so I think just seeing how they go from the lows to the highs, or highs, you know, just that being there with them in those moments and seeing them be able to celebrate all the hard work that they put into it. And I know what hard work they put into it, because I'm on the journey with them. So I think that's my high and low for it, basically.
Yeah, that's great. Nichelle or Paul, well, your best thoughts when it comes to that direct connection with athletes?
I think my comment would be sort of derivative is what I've seen. So we, the area of the business that I work in, we create media content. And so we often need to engage our drivers. We want to create stars. We're trying to make them stars. And so we're trying to put them into opportunities where they can be exposed, they can begin to build their brands, et cetera. And we see the value in what we're trying to do for them and trying to bring these opportunities. But one of the challenges is they don't always see the value. There's only 24 hours in a day. And of course, they have so many hours that are devoted to their craft and their other obligations with their sponsors and partners, particularly NASCAR is very sponsor driven. And so sometimes it is a challenge to get them to participate in the way we want them to. When it is fantastic is when those things sort of align and the driver recognizes that this is an incredible opportunity that they need to say yes to and really expose themselves and open themselves up to being seen. It results in something that helps to build their brand, and we can all feel really good about that. So that would be something that I guess I would share.
Yeah, that's great. And Paul, you've been in their shoes as an athlete. I wonder how that sort of affects or frames your ability to work with athletes, even on the business or legal side.
Sure. I think probably one thing that everyone on this panel shares, and Jeff's the moderator, and each of you as folks that are interested in sports, is you are a competitor, right? You have a competitive edge to you. And what you see when you deal with these folks is that there's a reason that they're at the professional level, that they're at the height of the game. And it's because they're driven and they expect the same, whether it's from their footwear and apparel supplier or from their agent or from the car that they're driving or from the company putting out digital content about them, right? Their expectations for themselves and their own performance is very high. And so they have that same level of expectation for the people that they surround themselves with and they choose to partner with. And so it is a continual, it's a great way to continually have to push yourself to excel and be at the top of your game because the expectation is there from the other side.
And Jake, how about you? Any experiences yet about, the direct connection with athletes?
Yeah, I think sort of what Paul was saying, just the importance of content in today's day and age, because that's sort of what we master and what we're really good at. Every athlete wants to build their brand off the field or off the court. So it's just interesting to see how the importance of capturing content, amplifying content, modifying content is so important for athletes nowadays. And it's way more important than it was back in the day. So it's just interesting to see that dimension between content as well as their playing on the field and off the field.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's Farron, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Littleton. Great thoughts, a question you have in chat, feel free to just to ask it directly. So I want to make sure that if you want to add in any of your own background, feel free to do that. Let's see, or it came from Yolanda. Well, the question was, it's actually for Joe and Allison. She said, I'm attending USC School of Business Entrepreneurial Program, then headed on to Stanford for MBA and law school.
Hi, Jeff. Sorry.
Hey,
this is Farron's mom. I'm trying to get Farron to do it. And she's like, Mom, I'm studying for midterms. So anyhow, I'm asking this question for Joe and Allison. Paul and Michelle, thank you. And this has just been a phenomenal conference today. Thank you so much for hosting it. Just absolutely invaluable to our future generations and the next generation. And Jeff, I grew up in Long Beach also.
Love that.
Bixby Dolls.
Love it.
David Starr Jordan, Panthers.
Love it.
Way
That's
back
great.
when. Paul,
Yes.
I'm UCLA, 1986, business economics. And we are a family of entrepreneurs. So Allison and Joe, the question Farron has is, what made you decide to go into your own firm? And prior to going into your own firm, as an entrepreneur, did you work for anyone? And she's USC, Jeff, and she's cinema. She's doing a double major. cinema as well as business, finance, accounting, and then she's going on to Stanford for her MBA as well as law school.
Would you please tell her to take my class, my sports business media class at least?
I'm
Journalism 380.
definitely going to have her do that. So sports, Jeff, your classes, let me write this down. Your
Sports
class-
business media. It's in the Annenberg School of Journalism. Sports business journalism 380. 380.
380. So sports, business, and
Media.
yeah.
Little-
She's a great student. She was a 4.0 all throughout high school, and we're
I need her
hoping
in-
for the same in college.
I need
So
her in the
she's-
class. Shameless
That's why
plug.
that's why she's stressing. She's like, Mom, I gotta study. I gotta study. So Allison and Joe, again, did you work for any firms prior to going into your own firm? And I'm all for the entrepreneur. So, and just as a firm, in your own firm, how do you compete with some of the big guns and just really putting that all around brand for the athletes, entertainment, sponsorship, very great endorse, their deals with their teams. So how do you fill all those seats, or do you do partnerships with other firms?
Joe, you want to kick this off?
Sure, yeah. So I've worked on kind of both sides of the industry before I formed my own agency, so the team and obviously the agency side as well. And so I saw that most of the agents that were on staff there were not getting any percentages of the actual contracts, which is where the real money's at. So
Right.
from a business perspective, you could either, try to take the 3% as an NFL athlete, or 5% for for baseball, or you could go the salary route at a firm and not really get anything. I was really willing to risk it a little bit more, so that's kind of why I went that route specifically. I have a lot of friends who went the other route and are recruiting first round picks, but they're making 110 grand a year, which is kind of chump change on what you're bringing in. So I think it kind of just depends on. But I would say from the other side of that as well, working for a big firm, they have the marketing, departments in there. It's not even a marketing person. There's 8
Right.
people working on it. They give you the company credit card to go take all these guys out. So you're not worried about spending 30 grand on training and 40 grand to sign the kid with a marketing advance and, however much it's going to cost entertaining him as well, which owning your own company, obviously, that's something you have to consider.
Gotta have that Black American Express card. I do comprehend, I know.
Yeah.
So got it. Got it. So Allison, I love the name of your company. Just absolutely phenomenal. Are you primarily placement with teams, or are you also covering the whole gamut for your clients?
Yeah, we work 360 degrees with our clients. So on and off.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you for
That's great.
appreciate you liking the name Disrupt the Game. I like it too.
Yes. Very impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um,
How did
but
that come about, Allison? I mean, I'd love to. What was the story of when you just said, you know what? That's what it's going to be, because it has an unforgettable ring to it for sure.
so I was working at a company called Raptor Accelerator, and we had a venture capital arm that was very much in the weeds on consumer tech, and just it was like the start of the word disruption really catching on in a positive way, of companies coming in and disrupting whatever space that they were in from a technology standpoint. And so I wanted to be corny and cliche and think that I was going to come in and work with clients and help them change the game. And I thought change the game was overplayed. And so just substituted disrupt in from all the disruption connotation that I was hearing around the office. And yeah, that's where Disrupt the Game came from.
Yeah, that's great. So Nichelle, because we talked in the sports media communication panel so much about how digital has, there's been this great shift to digital on the media side. What's it been like on the legal side of sports and the growth of digital, and of course directly impacting what you do?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. This is an area, it is a very dynamic, ever-changing area. Certainly when I came in, platform owners like NASCAR.com or NBA.com or MLB.com. We ran the show. You know, we had exclusive content. It was on our platform. We drove clicks to our platforms. We drove advertising dollars from our platform. In the time since I started this work, this was 2012, 2013, that has shifted entirely over to third-party platforms like the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what have you. And so you really saw a power dynamic shift from the publishers having the power to the platforms having the power. And it's been interesting, to say the least. You know, you go from having leverage of a sort to having less leverage. And there's a lot of content that we put in the social media platforms that before we would have put behind a paywall, or we would have tried to have, subscriptions and other things to kind of own those channels. So I think we've all kind of learned to live within this ecosystem, and it continues to change and is ever evolving. So I think if you're interested in an area that you can really shape and mold and really, have a voice in kind of how it's going to shift and move, digital is really that, because every day there's something new. We just heard there were some changes just this week that had to do with the Google ad networks, and people don't really understand what that means, but that is a huge ecosystem shift that's going to determine dollars for years to come. There will be companies that will close because of a decision like that. So it's very impactful. I think it's a huge opportunity for people who want to dig in, learn something new, and really figure out exactly, where the value is in these various models and take advantage of them.
Yeah. Paul, does that resonate with you? Just the growth on the digital side, just for in that role as senior counsel?
It does. I mean, it is the public-private distinction now, and the digital world has changed. I mean, one of the things that the brands typically require is exclusivity, right? And now that's exclusivity everywhere. And now that you've got all the digital and all the content distribution, everyone has a camera, right? And so the ability to hide from public scrutiny has disappeared. So that's where we see it the most on the brand side, is there and on the commerce, right? Our push is to try to get the athletes to help drive the sales of their licensed products. Some athletes are very good at that. Damian Lillard does a great job. Other athletes are not so good at it because they quite don't understand how to use the media to help drive their persona and to help push their economics. And that's where I think good agents come into play, where they help them with that path, and they help them understand why it's advantageous for them to push this content out through their social media channels.
Mm-hmm. Great. Joe, I want to get back to you on Michael Sam, because I do think there's there's some important takeaways here, because this was someone, if you guys remember the name, he was the first openly gay player announced. It came out before the draft, so directly affecting perhaps his draft status a few years back too. And Joe, you were rejected by Michael Sam in the beginning, and I just think that there's the story of how you kind of reconnect with him, I think is one worth telling, and we'll kind of try to wrap it up here. Unfortunately, it went so fast. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So it was it was one of those situations where it was my second year, and I was only, I believe, 26 or 7 years old at the time. So I was hearing no a lot more than I wanted to hear no. But, I said, hey, I unfortunately, I understand that decision, but if you'd like to keep in touch, the door's kind of always open. So about a week goes by and Michael reaches out to me at like 5 a.m. West Coast time. And he calls me. So I'm like, I have to pick this up. So I pick it up and I assume it's a butt dial, but it's not. And he says, Joe, I wanted to sign with you in the first place, but the only reason why we didn't, or that I didn't sign with you, is because we didn't have a conversation about me being gay. And are you okay with that? And I said, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I be okay with that? And after that, the conversation just kind of went where he signed with his first agents because they were the only people who brought it up to him. And I said, like Michael, I had read some things and I had heard some things for some scouts, but that's none of my business. And so I didn't feel like it was appropriate to bring it up. And if you wanted to talk about it, you would have brought it up. But if you don't, then we obviously don't need to. So that was kind of the start of our working relationship.
So when you lose a client, and so much about being having success as an agent is obviously you have to get clients, just like coaches have to recruit players. If
Right.
you don't get a client, instead of showing your frustration or saying you made a terrible mistake, you wish them good luck and you stay positive. And guess what? He came back in this case, and players can transfer to your school that where you left a good impression. That's why I think it's important.
Yeah, sports is such a small field that, burning bridges is just not a good idea unless the person is like genuinely a bad individual and an unethical person. And then you still probably want to watch your back because they're probably going to go after you, honestly.
Yeah.
But
Can I just add something on that
Please do,
just
Michelle.
before we wrap? Because I've heard a consistent theme and I just want to be sure we hammer it home.
Yep.
Your reputation in this industry is like all you have, 100%. How you show up in every deal. I've got a nickname, it's the Velvet Hammer, right? So I'm always pleasant. I'm always pleasant. I get what I want, but I'm pleasant and I'm reasonable. At least I like to say that I am. And so you want to be friendly. You want to be kind and you want to be accessible. And I think, your integrity, I've heard that on this panel. And and the other thing is saying yes. I've heard people saying they've had a lot of different experiences. I'm on this panel tonight because I got a call from my general counsel 2 days ago that said, hey, we have this opportunity. And, what do you think? And she asked two other attorneys who were just, no, I'm a yes person. So I always say, yes, I can do that. And now I got to know Paul, I got to know Joe, I got to know Jake, I got to know Allison, got to know Jeff. Allison doesn't know it. My very best friend is the president or executive director of the WNBA Players Association.
Terry's your best friend?
Right. Her son is my godson, and her husband is my husband's very best friend. They were in our wedding. We were in their wedding. So I know, I love the WNBA.
It's a small world of sports.
I wouldn't have been here had I said no. So I just want to throw out, and as tired as I was, and I didn't want to put on makeup or, clothes that needed to be presentable, I'm so glad for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for saying yes, Michelle. Thank you for saying yes, Paul and Allison, Joe, and Jake. It's been a pleasure. We could go on a lot longer. You guys offered so much, so many great takeaways, but so appreciate you taking the time to do this and to be there for the students. And if they want to be in touch with you, I will, I'll pass along the contact information, or feel free to drop it in the chat if you'd like. But thank you guys so much.
LinkedIn for me.
LinkedIn, terrific, and terrific, great job. Thank you guys so much. You've been awesome. Just crushed it. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
You bet.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Take care.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank our panelists.